Now, there seems to be a common theme when it comes to the LGBT community approaching or addressing the straight population, and that's commonly oppression by aggression. So if you're interested in figuring out how I came to this conclusion, buckle your seatbelts because this is going to get weird. Anybody that's old enough to remember, anybody that's grown up in the late 80s, early 90s, can attest for just how much aggression there was towards the LGBT community back in the day, before there really was a community. Back then it was just basically homosexuals, looking to be accepted and looking to be part of the community and not judged, which I totally agree with. We have come a long way. We really have. I remember what it was like growing up in that kind of situation, that kind of household. My parents in general weren't really that way, but I had a lot of relatives and a lot of friends and whatnot that showed a lot of aggression towards homosexuals. And I didn't agree with it then. Did I partake? Maybe. But there's a good reason for that. I'll let Louis C.K. explain.
I miss that word, I grew up saying that word, and it never meant gay. When I was a kid, I didn't know what gay was. No, I hadn't been told that people do that. I had no fucking idea. Faggot didn't mean gay. When I was a kid, you called somebody faggot because they're being a faggot, Didn't mean, I would never call a gay guy a faggot unless he's being a faggot. But not because he's gay, you understand? If I saw two guys blowing each other, and I don't know why I'm watching them do it, but if I just happen to... I don't know. But if one of them took the dick out of his mouth and started acting all faggy and saying annoying faggy things... people from Phoenix are Phoenicians or something like that. I'd be like, hey, shut up, faggot. Faggot! Quit being a faggot and suck that dick. That's what I would say to him.
Since then, there has been a lot of progress when it comes to the LGBT community. And you know what? I honestly applaud them for that. I think that's something that needed to happen. So as far as that's concerned, good to go. Now, recently, we've had certain YouTubers come out. YouTubers like this Riley J. Dennis that have suggested that people are bigoted because they have certain preferences when it comes to their own sexuality. And I find this absolutely atrocious. I really do. Why isn't it good enough just to be accepted? What's wrong with that? We are now being told that we're bigoted for the stupidest reasons because we have certain sexual preferences. This makes absolutely no sense to me.
Would you date a trans person, honestly? Think about it for a second. Okay, got your answer? Well, if you said no, I'm sorry, but that's pretty discriminatory.
See, what you are doing is putting everybody in the same category, doing exactly what you're telling us that we're guilty of, being discriminative towards us because we have certain sexual preferences. This is a very personal issue. It's a very personal issue because everybody has their own opinions. Everybody has their own preferences when it comes to dating. Should gay people be ridiculed for being gay? Because that's basically what you're telling us here. By your logic, we should be telling gay people that they should be straight or they're bigots towards straight people.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying you're a horrible person who hates trans people. There was probably a time in my life when I said I wouldn't date a trans person.
You mean before you were a trans person? Now that you've made that choice and you've made that leap and you've come to that conclusion, it is now your job to go out there and make people feel guilty for that, right?
Since then, I've thought critically about it and changed my mind.
And by thinking critically, you mean you have grown your hair out, you've dressing like a woman, you've identified yourself as being a transgender person, and now it's everybody else's job, all right, to go along with whatever you're saying, or they're the bigoted ones.
I could sit here and show you photos of conventionally attractive trans people. There are definitely trans people who you would never know are trans unless they told you, because they pass for cis. And that might convince some of you. But I think arguing that you would only like a trans person if you didn't know they were trans is a poor argument.
This is where we come to a serious problem when it comes to the transgender community. A lot of people that pass for cis, as they're calling, which is basically a straight person for you people that don't know that, a lot of these passable transgender people are actually going out there and doing sexual acts without telling the other person that they're transgender. Some transgenders out there are just that passable, but you can't really tell. So what does a guy do when you've spent the whole night making out with a woman, at least someone you thought was a woman, maybe to find out that they were the gender that you thought they were? See, this is deceit. See, now what you've done is force that person to cross a line that they weren't ready or prepared to do. See, back when you Riley J. Dennis here, were a straight person, or before you came to your own conclusions, you had time to decide whether or not you were gay. You had all this time to figure this out. But you had your own lines that you weren't ready to cross then, all right? Not so much now, because it seems like you'll date anybody, which is fine. That is your preference, but it's not everybody else's preference. It's certainly not my preference. I know that if I went out to the bar or something like that, and I had a few drinks in me, and I started making out with some girl, and started grinding, getting a little sexual, and find out later on that it was a man, I would be absolutely pissed off. Why? Because you're forcing your lifestyle on me. You would be forcing me to be gay. Okay, so what does somebody do at that point? And you wonder why guys get so aggressive when it comes to this kind of stuff. Yes, expect a punch in the face, because you know what? You just force that person to be gay. You force someone to cross a line that they didn't have time, to comprehend. They didn't have time. And if we come out and say, you know what? You can't just do that to somebody. You're automatically labeled as a bigot because you're not willing to make out with someone of the same sex. It was your job to come out and tell that person before you force them to cross the line they weren't prepared to cross. Okay? So this is deceit. And yes, a lot of trans people out there will say, well, I can't just go around and say, hey, I'm trans all the time. And yes, you do. You absolutely do. If you made that lifestyle choice before you end up making out or getting sexual with someone of the opposite sex, okay, you have to let that person know. You have to let that person know. If not, you're taking something away from them. You're taking away their choice whether or not to be gay. This is where the real true hypocrisy comes with the transgender community, okay? Because we can't tell you, all right, to be gay or not to be gay, but you can tell us by deceit. That's a problem. That's a real problem in society. But God forbid we call it out, because if we do, we're a bigot.
I think you could be attracted to any trans person, whether they pass or not. I think the main concern that people have in regards to dating a trans person is that they won't have the genitals that they expect. Because we associate penises with men and vaginas with women, some people think they could never date a trans man with a vagina or a trans woman with a penis.
Boys have a penis, girls have a vagina.
So I'm going to let people in on a little secret that they might not understand about the transgender community. See, there's a memo that a lot of straight people didn't get. Somewhere along the lines, it was decided unanimously that gender is a social construct. A social construct, meaning that your biological sex has nothing to do with your gender. Personally, I find this stupid. Let's be honest. I find this very stupid. Gender is a biological construct, not a social construct. But this is the memo that a lot of straight people have been missing. Find it ridiculous if you will, but this is the foundation of why we're seeing so many videos like this, and why we have so many people believing that gender is some kind of magical thing that we can just change at any depending on what we like or what we don't like. And it just doesn't work that way to people that have actual logic, or anybody that's taken a biology class. Are transgender people really delusional, where they actually believe that they're males or females or whatever? Yes, they actually do believe that. But they also believe that it's a social construct that has nothing to do with their biology. My argument to that is who you truly are has nothing to do with your gender. It never has. Has nothing to do with your sexuality, has nothing to do with anything. Has to do with what's in here. All right? What's in here is not male, it's not female, it has no sex, it has no gender. Okay? So the idea of gender being a social construct, to me personally, is absolute horseshit. And I say that because, inside my head, inside my heart, I'm not a male either. I'm not a female. I'm just a person. Okay? So if I need to slap a gender on my soul, okay, that's kind of a sad thing. And to run with that and say, well, no, actually I'm a woman because this is the rule that was decided amongst the LGBT community. You're allowing an entire community of people to decide who you are.
But I think that people are more than their genitals. I think that you could feel attraction to someone without knowing what's between their legs. And if you were to say that you're only attracted to people with vaginas or people with penises, it really feels like you're reducing people just to their genitals.
You can feel any way you want it to feel. It doesn't matter to me personally, but it certainly matters to you. Maybe I don't want to date a man. Maybe I don't want to date someone outside my race, or maybe I only want to date people, that are a different race or a different gender. It's really none of this person's business. It's really none of your business. So, because it's something so personal, something that you believe in your own head, something that you hold true to, that makes sense to you, how is that something that's Riley J. Dennis's business? How is it right to be called a bigot for those preferences? How is that right? So people out there, really think about it. All right, take a second, close your eyes if you have to, really think about it. What do you prefer? What do you prefer? Personally speaking, growing up, I preferred gothic chicks. I was really big into the goth scene. I really liked pale skin and dark hair. That was my thing. Obviously, it's not something that I've clung to as I grew up. I married a blonde after all, and realistically, it's not because I had preferences or didn't have preferences. It was because of who she was. But I'll tell you something right now: if she was a man, I don't think I'd be comfortable with stepping over that line. And that's what it comes down to: comfort. What are you comfortable doing? I'm not comfortable being a homosexual because I'm not a homosexual. Okay, this person here, Riley J. Dennis, is a homosexual. She has made, or he has made, that decision. And that's where they're comfortable with. Now, I'm not in any way saying that this person doesn't have that right. Of course they do. But everybody does. Everybody has the right to decide what they want, who they want, without ridicule. I know one girl in particular that only prefers black men. But you'll never hear me bitching and moaning about it because that's her preference. I can care less what she likes. Okay, she only likes black men. I have no chance with her because I'm white. Whatever, that doesn't hurt me. I don't feel discriminated against because of it. That's her preference. I don't care. So at what point did we decide that everything is racist, that everything is bigoted in one way or another? Okay, at what point did we decide this? Why can't people just be who they are? Why do people have to adhere to the transgender community or the LGBT community? How far are we willing to take this? How far is too far?
Anyway, my point is, we have implicit biases that we were raised with or that we developed over time, and they can be hard to get rid of. And I think this can be especially prominent within the queer community. Gay men often pride themselves on being disgusted by vaginas, and the same goes for lesbian women with penises. It's difficult because some queer people have built their sexual identities on these repulsions, but I don't think they're innate at all. If you met someone who was extremely attractive, had a great personality, but didn't have the genitals that you wanted, you might be surprised to find that it isn't a deal breaker. As someone who is trans and gay, sometimes people ask me with a very accusatory tone if I would date a girl with a penis. Because there's this stereotype that trans lesbians are just predatory cis men creeping on cis women. But the thing is, I absolutely could be attracted to a woman with a penis.
Penis. Just once more. Penis, penis, penis.
I could be attracted to any woman, cis or trans. If I find you attractive, I don't care what you have down there.
That's wonderful that you have reached that level where you can date anybody, male, female, penis, no penis, okay, and be okay with that. That's fine. Right? That's wonderful. Go ahead, do your thing. You have that right, and you have that preference, and I respect you for that, okay? But what I don't respect is you telling people that they're bigoted because of it, because of the same reasons.
We know that sexual orientations are more innate than learned. They're more nature and less nurture.
Yes, it's definitely nature over nurture, and nature isn't always right. It really isn't. Anybody that has a dog, or anybody that's seen pets, knows that things in nature can be gay. There's no question there. For those people out there that say that homosexuality isn't natural, I beg to differ. It's extremely natural. It happens in nature all the time. But there are other things out there that are natural as well. Rape, for example. Rape is perfectly natural. In the world of nature, okay, most creatures, most species out there rely on rape to procreate. So does that make rape okay? So there are fine lines when it comes to nature versus nurture, but in this case it just makes no sense because naturally, okay, if what feels natural is women, as a straight man, all right, if that feels natural to me, why should I force myself into something that feels unnatural? That makes no sense, all right? And it's not because I grew up being a straight person. It's not because, hey, men are men and women are women and that's that and whatever. Okay, I understand how I might look. I get that, all right? It's beyond nature and nurture. If something feels wrong, you shouldn't do it. And basically what this person is saying, this Riley J. Dennis person, is saying, if it feels unnatural, do it anyway. You might like it. No, I'm sorry, but it just doesn't work that way. If something doesn't feel natural to me, I'm not going to do it.
Gay conversion therapy has been proven not to work, but you can unlearn your own prejudices. It just takes time and conscious effort. And the way that we talk about potentially dating trans people has a lot in common with the way we discuss other preferences. Saying that you're not attracted to fat people isn't innate. It's informed by a society that tells you that being thin is ideal. Everything in the media you consume is bombarding you with messages that skinny is beautiful and fat is ugly. And
this is a very poor example, because when it comes down to it, people see like obese people anyway as being unhealthy. Some people prefer women or men that are going to be around for a little bit longer, someone that takes care of themselves, someone that works out, and watches what they eat. And it's really easy to see people that are exceptionally overweight as being lazy or unhealthy, or someone that just generally doesn't care, about how they look or how they feel. Okay, it has more to do with than just preferences. It has to do with, hey, do I really want to be with somebody that, that eats nothing but McDonald's and sits around and doesn't do anything, like zero ambition? Is that something I really want? No.
Even the nicest of people absorb these messages to some degree. But again, if you find someone attractive and really enjoy spending time with them, there's no reason why their weight should be a factor. Especially since we know that the relationship between weight and health is extremely complex, and you really can't make any moral judgments on a person based on their weight.
But what is attraction? Again, what is attraction? Well, a 500-pound beaster that's, shoving, Big Macs down their throat on a constant basis and barely works out or barely takes care of themselves. They're balding, they're 90 years old. I highly doubt that this person would date that person. I highly doubt that. And they'll use the same excuse that everybody else uses. Well, I'm just not attracted to that. Well, what makes them not attractive? Their weight? Their age? At what point how are you being discriminated against this person because you won't date them? Because that's basically the question that you're asking us.
And lastly, let's talk about disabled people. Disabilities come in a very wide range, from being deaf to being in a wheelchair to only having one arm, and I think it's pretty ridiculous to say that you couldn't be attracted to any person who has any of those disabilities. Disabilities can happen to anyone. Someone you're extremely attracted to today could become disabled tomorrow, and that shouldn't make your attraction to them disappear. Though if it does, it might not be because of them, but rather because you have some preconceived ideas about disabled people that are just inaccurate and harmful. Unsurprisingly, this is another case of the media telling you that a certain group isn't attractive. Disabled people are rarely romantic leads. Their stories in movies and TV shows are often tragic, but that doesn't reflect the reality that disabled people can be happy and have dating lives and be attractive.
What is disabled? Mentally disabled? So, according to Riley J. Dennis, this person would have no problem, dating a Down syndrome person. It's a disability, isn't it? I highly doubt that would happen, though. At this point, they would come out and say, well, I'm just not attracted to that type of person. Oh, you mean you have preferences? You have preferences, okay. So you would date someone that's Down syndrome. Okay, so you have preferences. Bigot. You find attraction in someone that is in a wheelchair. It's a matter of, weighing the odds here. Is that person extremely unique? Is that person, the one for me? Then yes, get over your preconceived notions of, someone that you would date or wouldn't date. Sure, okay, so if that's the case, that wheelchair is just a pain in the ass, just as much it is for them. But here's the thing, all right? If you're deciding, between this disabled person and, someone that's not disabled, and they all have the same factors and you like them equally, who are you going to choose? That's right, bigot.
Now, if you're not attracted to someone, you're not attracted to them. I'm not going to tell you that you have to be attracted to this fat person or that trans person or that disabled person.
Okay, so you're saying that, I'm not telling you can't have sexual preferences, you can't do this, you can't do that, but that's exactly what you're saying. Because what you're telling us is that if we have those preferences, then we're going to put into this category where we're socially shamed and socially ridiculed. All right, in the same fashion as being a Nazi. I'm sorry, but because I don't want to date a trans person, that doesn't make me a Nazi, okay? And that's basically what this person is saying. That's messed up.
The more you work at unlearning your own prejudices, the more you'll be able to see people from these groups as people rather than tired stereotypes.
Now here's the thing with Riley J. Dennis. I don't necessarily disagree on everything that this person says. Not everything. I do agree when it comes down to the idea of getting over, certain prejudices and whatnot. Yes, if you have certain preconceived notions and all that stuff, and stuff that you need to get over, yes, I totally agree with that. Should that play a factor in your love life? Should it play a factor in your sex life? So if you want a biological child with your wife, you're a bigot. How does it make any sense? I'm sorry, I'm not into bum sex all the time. Okay, I'm not into that type of relationship. I prefer this and I prefer that. Okay, I'm sorry, but I don't want to have bum sex all the time. Okay, does that make me a bigot? No! Well, that's the gist of it anyway. I'm not going to dive too much into it because it does give me a headache just thinking about it. In closing, people out there, straight people out there, don't let this person get to you. Having preferences in any way, shape, or form does not make you a Nazi, as these people might suggest. If you like my videos, if you like what I have to say, please like, subscribe. I do have a Patreon account if you feel like donating. If not, I also have this, which is my politically impaired mug. Fantastic. I would play the sales game and try to convince you that it's this exceptional mug that's, you know, cutting edge and blah blah blah. It's a regular coffee mug with the logo on it. Okay, I'm not gonna blow smoke up your ass. I also sell phone cases, t-shirts, and all that stuff with the politically impaired logo. So if you're a fan, grab one up, support the cause, or don't. That's all I have to say, and thanks a lot for watching. Don't be a stranger, and take care.